Well met, lords and ladies, Jacob Butter speaking, and a warm welcome to this week's Walking Wednesday. It's actually not that warm right now, it's actually somewhat cold. I'm recording this a lot earlier than I normally do because I have a little bit of a free time slot that I don't normally have because of things that we'll talk about later in this video. There's a lot to talk about in this video, actually, and because this week was packed full of, honestly, like, fantastic successes to possibly one of my greatest failures that may well have cost me a potential follow-up year in Spain. But we'll get there when we get there because I want to talk about some of the good stuff first. And to be honest, it seemed like all like scattered things that didn't really connect. Like just, everything seemed to converge this particular week that I thought nothing of major was going to happen in. But actually, when I thought about it just before starting recording, oh, for crying out loud. Well, here's my greatest failure right now. I've picked the dog route again. There was a person with a chainsaw cutting down trees prior to this encounter, and this route is actually closed off anyway. So I have to go back the way I came. Alright, well, chainsaw person it is, I suppose. Oh, now the puppies have started. Fantastic. To all those new people, this is what happens on Walking Wednesday all the time. I try to speak normally, and I get interrupted by dogs. Always dogs. Anyway, as I was saying, there is actually a connecting theme to what has happened this week for, the good stuff and the bad, and that theme is the fruits of my labor, which I'm pretty sure is going to be somewhat the title of this video. So, to start off with, this all feels like it's kind of coming off the heels of the Mutant Girl remake episode 7 releasing. And to some extent that's true. I mean, that happened last week technically, but it kind of seems to have kicked off everything. Now, I was kind of held up at the time about the whole release date thing and how I messed up that process, and how a lot of stuff needs to be fixed immediately, which affected the viewership and in fact the like ratings of the video in question, and diminished the hype behind everything as a whole. But yeah, I mean, at least people seem to enjoy the episode, and the fanfare, at least for some time, was greater than expected in terms of having how long it's been, basically. Because yeah, but then from that point onwards, the theme sort of continued. So after that, and after kind of recovering for quite some time, it's sort of like, okay, I'm gonna disconnect, recollect my thoughts, relax for a bit, and then we'll return to some other stuff. And that other stuff included the release of the Sword on My Lawn audition results, or I guess the cutoff. I think there was some like big stream that happened right afterwards. I think it was one of the passing of the torch videos, where because of maybe that was last week when the audition deadline came, and it was right before I could have possibly promoted the auditions one last time in order to get a greater pool of people to choose from. Not that the pool of people to choose from was insufficient, but it's definitely saying something when a lot of the characters were only auditioned for by one or two of the judges of said auditions, leaving the other person to judge for them. But either way, people seem to be okay with the results, and to be honest, we weren't looking to give that particular video too much fanfare. because it doesn't really need it. We don't really have designs for the characters. We've only written the first episode. You know, so it was a second priority thing in terms of getting the remake out. But to be honest, it was also quite apparent that, yeah, I was, little did I know that, you know, a greater pool than even the one that I was describing there with the passing of the torch, between those ones, was just around the corner. So also something that happened last week was that we looked at a video called Straight in an All Gay School on Gacha Review, and that one was recommended to me by Ghost Kitty, and then as a surprise of recommendations, basically, because she wasn't sure why that video got recommended to her in the first place, and had to send it to me because of the way that it was phrased. You know, satire, 2018 style. 2018 style in Gacha, for a lot of people, is synonymous with the worst era of Gacha content, which is why it stood out so much in that regard. So, you know, it was very much a be very, very afraid situation. And yeah, and we kind of were. And for good reason, because that video did not end up, you know, going down well in terms of Gacha review videos, and yeah, like it did like get it. It got some very negative results, especially from the LGBTQ+ guests on the stream. I mean, yes, it was intended as satire, but the satire was possibly not. Well, I say possibly, it was definitely not phrased in the way that it could have and probably, you know, should have been. Which basically meant that it was a video that was supposed to be made in somewhat support of the LGBTQ+ community, however, ended up coming across as homophobic to said community. So that's why I then titled the sequel from this week, the most totally not homophobic video, got a sequel, because it did. We were kind of waiting for that because there was an idea that, in typical 2018 style, basically, that the mini movie that it was would get a part 2 if it was properly demanded. And it just so happens that that video in question was rapidly becoming the most popular video that the Alpha Sisters, the channel it came from, had ever produced. Thus, it was being recommended to more people, namely Ghost Kitty, and found its way to me. That answers that question from earlier. But yeah, what it does answer was basically it was called Totally Not Homophobic because because a lot of people apparently had also complained about that, or maybe there was an idea that they might complain about it in the future, and so they reiterated that 3 of the 5 Alpha Sisters who manage the channel, you know, are members of the LGBTQ+ community. You know, basically just shields, you know, that line of defense. You know, basically, you can't really exactly say, you know, I'm not homophobic, I have gay friends. It doesn't really quite work that way. It's the same way as saying, you know, I'm not racist, I have black friends, or Asian friends, or, you know, any type of friends aside from my own ethnicity, basically. It can still very much happen, and a lot of the time people try to use that excuse to get away with more stuff. We didn't quite know the Alpha Sisters by this point, so that was also a concern, basically. But yeah, it's very clear by now that it was unintentional. And I can say that it's very clear because during while I was preparing for before the sequel stream, it seems like somebody who had caught wind of our previous stream, actually, and I think I previously commented on the episode, posted the link to said stream in the Alpha Sisters Discord server, which resulted in about 10 to 15 unusual guests on the channel to suddenly all appear at once. So what was basically a begrudging look at a sequel, in order to basically see what could it in fact pull off an improvement, or was it indeed worse, as Ghost Kitty had suggested, suddenly, right at the very beginning, became the most popular concurrent viewership stream of Gacha Review since the Jacobs 2024. Which, for context, was about less than 2 months ago, but still, the Jacobs, in terms of viewership, always end up attracting like the biggest, because it's a December stream, so already viewership is higher on YouTube, but also, it's the culmination of everything basically from that year. So yeah, completely unexpected. And yes, there were a few issues in the comments which resulted in the appointment of a new mod to moderate that in the future, obviously. That mod being Bon. Hold on. So there was a car emerging from the parking. There you go, look behind this. There's no peripheral vision when that happens. So, okay. Yeah, then, what was I going to say? No, I've lost it now. Oh, yeah, new acquisition, yes. So, I mean, yeah, there was, in a rare display, some things of what could be construed as hate comments, potentially, for during the stream itself. A lot of which I scrolled past because the chat was going very quickly by comparison to normal, so a lot was missed, but also a lot was ignored on purpose. Obviously, I'm not going to put too many comments on screen unless the guests address them. One person did in fact call us too sensitive in terms of what we deemed as homophobia in the previous video. Not sure if they watched the previous video before they commented that or not, but they said it regardless, so there's that. And Ghosty was very quick to shut that down in terms of saying, like, a lot that she'd gone through enough to, say, like, I'm sorry that you think that my perspective is sensitive, but it comes from a particular place. It is also worth pointing out that they said they didn't want to go into certain territories, such as in the sequel, representing genuine conversion camps, basically, because some people that they knew had gone through some of those, and they didn't want to trigger them accidentally, which kind of sounds like exactly what they did for the first episode, even if it was unintentional, which of course we also pointed out. So yeah, those same people, where the line lies in terms of what is deemed triggering and what is deemed, too sensitive, it's never consistent between people. So you either have to be okay with everything or okay with nothing, to some degree. That's why you get a lot of, particularly adult cartoons that decide to, let's offend everyone, to show that no one is off limits. It's the same concept, basically, but just applied in the reverse of what the Alpha Sisters were intending to do. And it does come down to that, because one of the Alpha Sisters was there on the stream. I don't think it was the one that made the video. Because it is worth pointing out that apparently one person was in charge. two dogs end up encountering themselves, I guess, are rivals, I don't know. Again, you know, it's always dogs, isn't it? Anyway, back to what I was saying. Yeah, you'll be pleased to know, based on based on what I said, you might have a very negative impression of what this sequel video would be, but actually, it turned out to be far better represented. I mean, it still played into some stereotypes, particularly the use of African American vernacular English in terms of sounding, you know, like gay language, basically. Because the idea was it was a straight conversion camp rather than a gay conversion camp, because, you know, they wanted to do the opposite. But yeah, they still didn't want to go too far with the idea, again, for other reasons. But yeah. Somehow they actually managed to balance out the satire in the sequel a lot more than the first one. Which was great, because it was because as much as I love to tear down a gacha video in front of the creators, you know, it's definitely nice to prop them up. Well, it's nicer to prop them up when it is definitely when it's appropriate to do so. So I'm glad that worked out, basically. And it worked out because, like, right after that, you know, I posted the results of the Sword of My Lawn auditions, and the Alpha Sisters congratulated everyone, basically. They commented on that one as well. And a lot of people have actually stuck by the channel and now like to tune in for other reviews of things. Which, yeah, I definitely wasn't expecting. Because a lot of them want me to go into, like, other Alpha Sisters content because of that particular fan base, but it's kind of difficult to do that when I have the unspoken rule of, well, unspoken, I've spoken it out loud before, of, you know, giving at least a week between channel entries so that I can actually give people a fair rotation, so not just, you know, all the time the same person over and over and over again, basically. So I'm glad that those people stuck around for that, and I'm sure the others are waiting in the wings with bated breath to see what I come up with when I come up with the next one, and come out, and yeah, we'll see what results that yields in due time. But for right now, we're in a little bit of that limbo period, at least. It's also worth pointing out that there is a playlist to watch their videos in law order, and apparently Straight and Norgay School is now the first in that order, because there was a cliffhanger at the end of part 2 in terms of what to do there. So it might be worth looking at the law playlist instead of specifically Bunny Wunny Tales, which is what they want me to look at next. Because, yeah, I do go against the grain a lot of the time in terms of what people request, in terms of I'll look at the same channel, but I don't want to just cover the stuff that people have already, like, deemed as, like, super good and popular, because then once you get into the other stuff, they'll be less interested, or it'll be more of a downgrade compared to an upgrade over time. That's why I keep going back to people's older content, with a few exceptions in between. Like with Rosie Closey, you know, I specifically started with the Music Freaks, and you know, at one point an episode of Changes, which you know, before that series was taken down, and then eventually went into, you know, like the drawing came to life stuff, and will at some point do Boy with Bad Luck and Girl with Good Luck, because I've also found a video that is adjacent to that I want to review as well. It's a whole thing. But yeah, until such a time, yeah, I've yeah, it's kind of like maybe like we think like, okay, what else should I include during this time, rather than just the passing of the torch videos. Although, to be honest, actually, it would be fun to loop those back again and to have the new people from the Alpha Sisters channel to see, you know, the other the other, like, you know, produced episodes from the people who are around behind the scenes, and kind of fuse them together. So you can see I'm still kind of like working out this stuff, because it is so recent that I'm trying to decide what is the next best step forward, you know? What else could I do? You know, in order to you know, harness this moment that has you know, presented itself, you know, even as suddenly as it did. So that question, of course, remains ongoing. Although I will have to say, yesterday's stream, which I said why I wasn't streaming yesterday and Ghosty was. I do have to once again apologize to Aiden about that, because he had a video that he was saving for today that he wanted to review with me, but because I wasn't streaming and he also had work, I gave the stream to Ghosty. I didn't realize he was going to choose the exact same video that Aiden wanted to watch, or at least the first part of it. So now we have, again, a week to possibly wait between those as well. So yeah, maybe I'll do torch passing tonight. We shall see. Maybe it's maybe Royale Ferry Academy needs another turn, because I think it's been a week since that one as well. Again, decisions. A lot of this is all made on the fly. On the fly. Royale Ferry Academy on the fly. Ah. Anyway. Yeah. Still all very much to be decided. But yeah, what was next after that? It was the auditions, it was that. Oh yes, another major success this week, actually, and one that I have just seen the fruits of my labor on, actually, is just the lessons I've been coming up with. So basically, because like the rotation is still kind of very awkward, because well, I mean, some teachers have had exams basically, so they reordered me. I think I had like teacher 2, then teacher 4, and I've had teacher 1 this week. It was the teacher 1 this week was actually the accurate version. Now I think about it, it just means that I've skipped out on teacher 3, which I will have to check for next week. What's going on? Are there more exams? Because yeah, the exams did in fact get in the way of some of my plans as well. But yeah, before that, I'll say that for some reason teacher 1's groups were all I mean, some of them, a lot of them were decently quieter than normal. There's still a lot of raucous cheering, and teacher 2 had to come in to tell them to simmer down, actually, because he was in the middle of doing a listening test. But you know, general enthusiasm aside, they actually they actually really engage with like the writing prompt itself. I don't know if it's because it was an individual one this time, and they're just, you know, so used to doing things in groups that I know they seem to have relaxed a lot more in that one. I don't know about the psychology of that, actually. I have to look after you know, reconsider those things. But in terms of the activity, that they actually you know, well, they actually like put the effort into. They didn't get too far in terms of like, you know, what they wanted to write, because they had to write as much as possible. Some of them had like, you know, 1 sentence or 2, but they still but like everyone was asking me and teacher 1 questions. You know, how do you say this thing? How do you say that thing? And they're not normally that active or that proactive in terms of asking for help. And then afterwards, you know, really wanted to even like to present, like they actually got up and presented what they had done, which was, you know, the goal in the first place. But it's so rare that they want to actually stand up and do things, or even like, you know, speak in front of the class, aside from when they're yelling in front of the class at each other. And yeah, it just made me really happy to think like, okay, you know, like the issue that they were having at this time was, you know, purely the English, because my other my other like major goal is, of course, to you know, promote a sense of creativity for them, basically. You know, like let them you know, lead the charge in terms of, you know, where they take an activity, rather than, as long as they follow the instructions, obviously, because some of them I'll say they copied the example that I gave on the board verbatim, which they were not supposed to. I did say example on the board. You know, it just, some of them are still so used to copying everything and are being told what to do, that even when I show up and like every single time my activity is always something to do with, you know, giving them the initiative and like making them think for themselves, there's always a couple that will be like, oh, well, this means copy this, and I will not ask questions. But the vast majority did it properly, and I was very happy that that was the case. And yeah, the only issue that occurred was that yesterday, actually, Teacher 1 was giving out the grades for all of the exams that they had done, and they had done a lot of exams recently, which meant that the grade the grade delivery took up the vast majority of the lesson, meaning they had no time to write stuff, meaning that eventually what got cut into was the presentation time, and only a couple of them could actually, you know, speak out what they actually had done. But the fact that they even done activity to begin with and, you know, had something, you know, prepared was fantastic. I have one more group to do that with today, one more new group later on when I go back, and another one that I didn't get through all of the results of. So then we will see what they come up with. And yeah, during that time when they were giving out the grades, I spent that time, you know, typing up the third notebook of the completed book, which again, you know, completed a book a couple of weeks ago. Now the fruits of my labor are, you know, being shown to me on the screen, where I'm like, you know, correcting a couple of things or rewording certain aspects, re-adding plot points that I forgot to put in when I lost my previous third notebook and I had to rewrite part of it, and so that's back in the story now, because it, you know, makes the whole you know, like big reveal come together a lot more if you have that stuff in. And yeah, I am now officially typing up the final chapter, which means that eventually, once I get the other typed up versions, I can then like look at the whole draft going from April, and then maybe get some people to look through that at some stage, give some advice, and then afterwards, you know, hopefully I'll still have a little bit of time in Spain, in which I can actually try and see if I can publish it. The answer is probably not, because I assume it's going to get rejected a lot, because that's just what happens. But hey, you never know. It'll be another excuse to go to Madrid potentially, if that's where all the big publishing things go. Then again, it's a story set in Galicia, so honestly doing that here would make more sense maybe. Again, I'll look into that in the future at some point. That's probably, that I'm guessing that will be a May activity because of the timing of it. Basically, my mum said that she wanted to, because she's typing up the first two notebooks, she said that she wanted to go through some stuff that she was going to give, and most of the time when she does that, she actually prints out everything and then, like, you know, has, like, you know, pen corrections as well, which means they'll have a whole stack of papers in order to look over as well as the actual file. And so yeah, it'll be a whole thing. Not to mention as well that some of the times when I was writing, I didn't have all the notebooks with me, so I'm sure there's some inconsistencies in there that will need to be gone over as well at some point. But hey, you know, more of it came together than I thought, because I had more time to work on it than I anticipated. So I made the most of that extra time that I didn't realize I was going to have. Much like I'm making the most of the time that I didn't know I was going to have now, because normally at this point I would be with the welding class for our Wednesday sessions. However, this time for real, my time with the second year welding class has come to an end. Monday was the last lesson that I had with that particular group. And at some point, the welding teacher is going to get together with teacher 4, who's the coordinator, again, to remind people, and then go over my schedules and basically assign me to some other portions. And apparently there are actually fewer first year classes because the welding teacher wants me to still be involved with his stuff and not necessarily the other groups, because he's the one that really likes to focus on English particularly, I guess, out of that department. And yeah, so we'll see. He thinks that I will have extra slots, but the chances are those slots will be filled up by, you know, other English classes to compensate, because I have a specific, like, you know, hour quota to meet, at least in theory. In practice, of course, if there are exams, they or there's a particular speaking activity or something, then they usually kick me out. But, you know, again, that's how things work here. There's the official version, and then there's what actually happens, basically. So yeah, I mean, I can only hope that the fruits of my labor, in terms of, you know, all the time I spent with them, will pay off. Some of them will be returning at some stage for, well, because some of them didn't actually pass. I think it was only 1 or 2 didn't pass, which means they would have their stay for another 3 months apparently. Although I guess what they're going to do will vary, and I'm not involved with that process anymore. Seemingly, I guess. Maybe it's, you know, whichever exams with the other teachers that they they use that recovery time. I don't actually know. Some of them are potentially, you know, working in their industry jobs right now as we speak, and getting to see the difference between the 3-hour sessions that were somewhat more relaxed in the school setting, and they would be the potential 8-hour sessions starting earlier that they will have to deal with now. So you can only hope that the at least the mental discipline from the other teachers, not from me, stuck with them. I don't know how many of them have gone international and therefore how many will need English, but I remember that the welding teacher said to me on Thursday, actually, he said, you know, you might not think you've achieved a lot with them, but some of them will realize the value of what you've done a little bit later. And also, this was their first time, you know, speaking with, you know, a native English speaker. So it was invaluable experience in that regard as well. He didn't phrase it quite that way, but, you know, I'm paraphrasing him, but that was the general consensus. So yeah, I mean, if he thinks I made a difference in that way, then I'm gonna say that I did. I don't know for sure, because a lot of them, of course, whenever I wanted to ask them questions or anything, again, I had to resort to Spanish a lot more with that group, because they were comprised of people who most of the time hadn't gotten the best results in their, you know, their academics, and had returned in order to do this new, like, professional formation course that they were on. And their interests, of course, you know, are, you know, differently aligned. They weren't expecting to look into English again, because why did they think they needed to? At least that was the thought at the time. I don't know about now. Again, we'll see what they start to think. And yeah, that one is somewhat of a mystery. We've gone from successes to potential successes. We'll see if that's a mystery or not. And now we get into, unfortunately, the most recent thing to happen this week, which was my biggest, my most colossal failure that, again, might have cost me a potential elongation of my time in Spain. I'm going to go back. There you go. Symbolically, I'm going to retrace my steps. So, there are 2 steps to reapplying apparently for the language assistant program. So one aspect was the one I did last month, basically, and that was the British Council portion, where they had like specific like documents they wanted, or recommendations for renewal of the program and such, and putting that forward. The other step was the Spanish portion, because they wanted you to apply for renewal through a site called Profex, which is tied to their the Sede Electrónica, the electronic sede, I guess, which is part of like the official like government branch or something. Profex, I believe, stands for Profesores del Exterior, so teachers from the exterior, from abroad. That's the idea. And yeah, they wanted some things for like passports, also a specific like health declaration, something from the principal as well, which I got him to sign and talk about a couple of days ago, and that took some time to organize. The deadline for that was supposed to be today, and I made it so that I knew I was going to have supposedly enough time, but because of honestly issues of trying to access the site in the first place, because the links were not very clear, the format was seizure inducing in some cases, and even when I was doing everything correct, depending on what computer I was using, and sometimes what browser, even though some of the ones they recommended didn't work, yeah, it just would not let me sign in for apparently security reasons. Lord forbid I type my username and password on a different device, having just registered my account. Which that was the other issue. It seems that I was supposed to do that last year, but they never told me about that. Like, I have looked through my old emails from a time before applying this year. There is nothing, talking about Profex from anything before February. So again, during the reapplication. But yet it seems like they say that, oh, if you don't apply through Profex, we can't, you won't get a position, you won't get a place, and we can't do anything about that because that's from their branch of the government, so they need to authorize that. It's like, well, that didn't matter last year. Apparently, I did everything regardless of what of what you said. So I don't know. So basically, I had to register for a new account, and because it's a new account, the application they gave me was for a new language assistant, not for a renewal position. Which meant that some of the stuff they wanted didn't quite match. They wanted like a declaration of why you want to be in the program or something, but yet that was not one of the documents for renewal, because I guess you're already in the program, so why have they asked for that? They also didn't ask for the same type of didn't ask for recommendation from the principal, because you wouldn't have that as a new person. You had to use those documents and connect them, because that's what they said. And also on top of that, there's things that they obviously, if you're applying for a renewal at this point, you're already supposed to have gone through your council and already know part of the process, but they asked you to clarify which organization, so basically which country you were applying from, like which other government branch are they connected to, and also what location would you use to get your visa. And for some reason, I don't understand why, for some reason, neither one of those sections I just pointed out which were apparently obligatory fields, featured anything from the British Council or from the London place that I got my visa from last time, which, you know, obviously successfully gave me a position. So it's clearly connected to them in some way. Or even if it weren't, that, you know, that's not their department. You know, if it's like the education side of things, the visa is just for like is for residents. That's not controlled by them. So they just want you to declare, oh, you know, I guess I've thought about these things. And it turns out, yeah, I thought about these things. You haven't, apparently. So basically, I had to just put whatever on there. I put like NALCAP as the organization, which is the American one, and then for, you know, the residents or something, I went to my film brain mode and said, oh yeah, sure, Casablanca, why not? It's on the list there, sure, who cares? And supposedly I submitted it, you know, before the time. It's apparently in revision at the moment. Which, yeah, basically, yeah, we'll see what they think, because I mean, I'm sure that they could either flat out reject it because it doesn't align, or they can just say, oh, we've submitted these fields, but, you know, it's not our department, so why do we care? And they could also assume that I'm a new applicant rather than a renewal one, and that have a whole issue based on some of the documents that they have not necessarily matching. And before anyone asked, I did email them. I tried calling them, it was outside of their hours, so I didn't get through. I then emailed them, and they confirmed they received my email. You know, we've received your email or something, you know, for a very automated reply, obviously. But yeah, they know that there's a query because they replied to that one. I like my actual line of questioning. I also went through the help page. But yeah, none of that was going to come through in what I presume is the time. Unless the deadline for it was supposed to be today, as in like today at 11:59, rather than, you know, today at midnight, which would be, you know, right before that happened. Like, I waited until basically like 11 p.m. or something, which is the real reason why I didn't stream last night. Aside from the fact that I was also trying to, you know, do holiday arrangements with, you know, with the Spanish crew, and also somebody else who might be joining us this year. We also didn't manage to do that because there were 4 of us and only 3 places in the thing we were planning to do. So we are considering, should we do other options, pick a different destination, which would probably be a cheaper alternative, depending on, you know, how and when we go about it. And yeah, I don't know. So basically, you know, but for the next couple of days, we'll be checking in to see if those places open up, and if they do, then we will book accordingly. So again, not a major success, but also not a major failure either, because it was like, you know, that was just extra. And while I was there, because of course, you know, they're the Spanish crew, and you know, they probably have more experience with the Sede Electronica than I have. Maybe not with Profex, because why would they need to do that? But yeah, just in general. And I showed them exactly what the issues were, and they all agreed that I had done everything in my power to fix it. And then also you recommended, like, oh yeah, you know, make sure you prioritize these things, or, you know, change the order, whatever. Because I mean, I guess, which again, they also, after doing the British Council side of things, so surely they would have that info. I think maybe last year they just forwarded everything I did to Profex. I'm guessing that's what happened. But again, that meant that I didn't have an account, which I apparently didn't need. But they say you need it. I'm very confused. But basically, because of that, I don't know if I'm going to be physically able to continue in the program next year. Because, you know, that was such a colossal disaster. So who knows? I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening right now, a lot of opportunities that I'm trying to harness, either during the time that I have left here anyway, before I would have to go, or ones that have presented themselves this week that could lead to other stuff and could not, but but would need to be followed up in some manner in order to actually leverage those things in the first place. And all of that kind of came together at once. So basically, despite that part, I'm still holding on to the payoff that has been put into motion for so many other things that I'm doing. And that's why connecting tissue for this is the fruits of my labor, because the fruits of my labor might not be enough for this program again, but I have other options. I might return to my original plan. If this falls through, I will return to my original plan for what I wanted to do after university, for what I declared the day that I think it was my dad asked me, right after Siren Story, what was my plan for the future? Because university was coming to a close at that point. And that original plan was my goal until I got invited to Lyon in 2023, and then I learned about this program to begin with. And I'm grateful that I didn't go back and do a master's when I originally envisioned I was going to, after a year of basically clearing my head from all the constraints of the rapidly changing education and everything, all the COVID stuff that was happening. I needed to leave for some time, but not for as long as I did. Which is why in 2023 I spiraled, because there was that gap that I had originally envisioned to fill in with something else and didn't. Or and my fear was of returning somewhat empty-handed. That was again during the Great Watch Hour race as well, which is my only major achievement in 2023 that I can really account for, aside I guess the Christmas special too. But that's when Muse and Girl started getting properly delayed, and when everything kind of slowed to a crawl except for live streams, which again, that would pay off in 2024 really more so than it did 2023. And now 2025, new heights again. But I think it was the only thing I could follow up at the time. But yeah, I've picked myself up from where I was at that point, but yeah, who knows. So again, I have that original plan. I don't know whether or not that will be an immediate thing, or whether I've missed the deadline for that too. Basically, it was always like a toss-up between okay, should I continue for another year here, or should I go back to original plan? And of course, the applications having deadlines meant that I would focus on those ones particularly, be like, okay, well, this is the thing I've got to follow up now. But yeah, who knows? Again, a lot of the stuff, nothing in the past 5 years has been anything like what I was expecting, for better or for worse. But yeah, some things that's something that I wished had a greater payoff did not. But some things that I was not expecting any great payoff from have now kind of gone to redefine how how my labor is even perceived or anything. I mean, 2023 was the year that Jacob started ultimately, right at the end. So you could kind of call that like a other picked up moment, because that again was my most popular stream at the time, even including the Butter Bunch. Speaking of that, I've also been working on a what if video for the Butter Bunch, and I've got to over halfway through that. Maybe today I'll continue to process that one. But another thing that I haven't been able to show off yet, because of all the other stuff that's been happening, but another thing that's been paying off in some way. And it's just there's a lot that I'm going on, especially because this all happened at once. I haven't, even like slept on it too much. The time that I was using to recover suddenly ended up being the time of, greatest change after what I thought was going to be, okay, it's like the big thing I was working on. Now let's focus on everything else. And then the everything else ended up, again, greater payoff than I thought. So yeah, I mean, I know I don't sound happy about everything because, again, the other stuff has just happened, and I will be looking into if they give me an email back or if the timing has continued, because I haven't been back since, first lesson in the morning, basically. But yeah, I'm now going to return and eat, and then see what else is going on, and then return, do class, do choir rehearsal, which I also had one extra of this week as well. I forgot to mention that, because actually the big thing that's going to happen is that, well, who knows, apparently I'm supposed to be performing on Friday in Vigo, actually, the big city nearby. Paperwork went through and I'm allowed to participate with the students. Ultimately, they decided, okay, yes, we'll authorize this. But also apparently there was something to do with like a market tomorrow, which I will have to ask about when I go back later for choir rehearsal. But unlike when normal working Wednesday, I don't have that immediately. But I'll still, I'll still have to figure it out, basically. But yeah, that'll be a fun way to wrap up the week regardless, because, the deadline will have passed, either already or by today. And then that'll mean I can recenter and just, sing for a bit. Because that will also be, again, we've rehearsed for this for such a long time. We haven't had a concert of any kind in 3 months since like the time we performed at the elderly residence, and that wasn't like a major audience or anything. That was like 6 invested people and 6 more uninvested. Like, this is the proper presentation of the choir in Vigo itself, which I would say a bit late in the year to do that, considering we're almost it's getting towards Easter by this point, but or towards Semana Santa, depending on when that lines. Like mid-April. Actually, we've got a while, but still, it's like halfway through the year for them, and 2 months left for me. So it feels like the end is nigh, actually. But yeah, it's happening. It's happening. I don't know what the market idea is. That's not being advertised. I just heard about that yesterday. So yeah, we'll find out. And then I'll talk about that next time. We'll see again what the fruits of our labor in terms of a choir will come to, because I'm hoping that there is still, great payoff in terms of that as well. Let's keep the good energy going. That's what I say. But for now, please leave a like or dislike, because your opinion matters. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And on that note, until next time, farewell.